Write it and they will come. First I want to say thank you for coming today, and I know it's raining and I know it's hot, and I'm so happy that you all are here. I'm so happy the room is full. Part of me just wants to go stand over here and I can just like look at the room and take it all in because it's fabulous. And I'm seeing all different kinds of people here, and actually that's really exciting for me as well. A couple of things I want to say. I want to first of all thank the festival producers, people who put this together to invite me. This is the first time I've been at the Decatur Book Festival as well. It's fabulous, but I'm not going to have any money left in my wallet when I go home. I'm having a wonderful time. I appreciate that. The other thing I want to say, this is kind of perfect for me. This is the first book, yes, that I've written. And it's perfect for me to come back here and do this talk because actually in 2005, I lived here for 1 year, and that's when I was doing this book as research for a dissertation, and I wrote it, the first draft, here in Atlanta. So it's really kind of nice for me to come back here and sort of have that moment. Thank you, Atlanta, because that was hard. Yeah, okay, black faces, white spaces. So a couple of things I want to do, but I want to make sure there's time for questions. So I just want to make sure my time is right, because this is one of my favorite topics, and I can go on and on. So how long do I go on for? How much time do they have for questions? How does it work?
Well, we'll let you know if you've got 5 minutes to go. If that's
yeah, please let me know. Go like,
5 minutes altogether.
And then 5 minutes, and then how long is that?
6:15.
Okay, but then there'll be time for questions. No, that's what I want. That's what I'm trying to understand. Yes. Let me know what I want. How much time do we have? No. 15 minutes before. I want there to be at least 15 minutes, 20 minutes for questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when it's 6 o'clock, you've got 15 minutes.
Beautiful thing. All right. Black faces, white spaces. So, why did I write this book? That for me is always the most important question. And as somebody who works in academia, I find that often people want to know what I have in my head about this, right? What's intellectual about this. And yeah, that was part of it, but actually, that is not why I wrote this book. That's not why I was motivated to tell this story at all. It is really personal for me. You know, so sometimes when I'm standing in front of the room, the first thing I like to say is, yes, I'm black. Because I'm about to talk to you about black faces, white spaces, and yes, I have biases, I have a point of view about this. I stand in this. When I wrote this book about other people, I was also writing this about myself, and so I have to be really honest about that. And I take a certain pride in that as well. So I got to tell you a little bit of the story of who I am. There's a couple of you in this room who've heard me tell that story before, but I can't ever start talking about this book without telling my own story. And part of that is because I believe that all knowledge is subjective, meaning that everything that we all know, we bring ourselves to that. You know, some people will challenge me on that because some people believe knowledge is objective, that we can kind of stand apart from it. What I know about myself is I cannot. And so I have to tell you a little bit about myself and where I grew up. So, mouth is dry already, okay. Both pictures are there. So I was born in New York. You know, it's really funny, people who know me. I was a geographer, why we do what we do, where we do it. It's all about place, people, and place, and the relationship between both. So where I stand, the land on which I stand on, is really important for me. I've lived all over the place. I presently live in Northern Cal, and so California, and I've lived there for about 7 years. But when people ever ask me, they say, where are you from? And I always go, do you want to know where I live or where I'm from? And then I say, because I'm from New York, and I will always be from New York. I once said that to an old dude in Chicago not that long ago. And I said the same thing, I gave him the look just like you, and he just looked at me and said, oh, you must be from New York. So I was born in New York. My parents, this is a picture from them, thank you for the water. It's a picture from them, of them from about 1957. They're still with us. My parents are from a small town in Virginia, Floyd, Virginia, Roanoke. They grew up there in the 30s, 40s, and 50s during Jim Crow segregation. Both of them have a high school education. My dad went off to the Korean War. When he got back in the late 50s, he had to find a job. And like a lot of black folks at the time who lived in the South, he decided they were going to move north because they thought they'd have a better opportunity. So they moved up to New York because my dad had a sister there who was a nurse. And he got 2 job offers. One was he could be a janitor in Syracuse, New York, which is about 5 hours north of New York City. And the other was about half an hour outside of New York City. There was an estate owned by a very wealthy Jewish family. If any of you have ever heard of the Tishmans, if you know New York City, the Tishmans have their own building. They own a lot of real estate there. The Tishmans also have a 12-acre estate right outside of New York City, and that's the picture you're seeing there. And they needed a gardener. They needed a gardener, they needed a chauffeur, they needed a sometime housekeeper, and my parents took that job. My parents did that job for 50 years. We lived on that land, right? So this picture in the corner is actually the gardener's cottage where I live. That's the gardener's cottage. The picture I don't have in there is what I like to call the big house. That the Tishmans came up to on weekends and holidays. And because the Tishmans would come up on weekends and holidays, it meant that actually my family, we had run to that place during the week. Now, my parents thought they couldn't have kids, so they adopted me. And then 2 years later, I had my first brother, and a few years after that, the second brother. So I have me and my brother, so we had run to the place. It was like being on your own little park, 12 acres. There was a small pond that had fish and snapping turtles and wild birds. There was a swimming pool there, multiple gardens, which you can't see. This driveway kind of loops around. It was very private. The houses are set off the street. Very, very wealthy white neighborhood. Harry Winston has property down the street. Wingfoot Golf Club is around the corner. Schaefer of Schaefer Beer lived next door. Schaefer Beer isn't very good, but anyway, they had a lot of money and they lived next door. There's so many stories I like to tell to give a sense of myself, and one of them I tell over and over again because for me it's the one that's the most vivid in my head of when probably as a kid I kind of started thinking about the color of my skin in relation to the place where I was living and what that meant from people looking outside in at me. And so I tell the story when I was 9 years old. And you have to picture me at 9, a little afro, I had reading glasses. I was coming home from school one day, and there was always cops patrolling the neighborhood because it is a wealthy neighborhood. And a cop stopped me. I was right around the corner from the house, and he wanted to know where I was going. And I said, 1000 Old White Plains Road, that's the address. And he just looked at me and said, "Oh, do you work there?" And I'm thinking I'm 9 years old. But I'm not saying that. And I remember going home and telling my parents that, and I remember my father getting really upset and calling the police station and giving him holy hell because of it. He thinks he's the most radical black man in America. And I think that was the first moment that being black in my family, that was an issue that I knew about within our family and how that was held, particularly in the 60s. But I think it was the first time I thought, oh, it's not really right or natural for me to live in a really nice place, or my family, with nice trees and wildlife and beautiful grounds to be on. It was abnormal somehow. And I also have to throw this in here, which I don't always do. It's really easy, particularly when talking about black and white, to say that it was the white people doing X, Y, and Z. What I want to also say, from the time I was in 4th grade right up into high school, but particularly 4th grade through 6th and 7th grade, I got beat up on a daily basis, but not by the white kids. It was by the black kids who didn't live up on the hill. Marion Mitchell and Darlene Robinson. Don't you wish that you could see these people again? What I would say. The thing is, what I wasn't able to say then, I was 9, I was 10. How do you have a conversation? They thought I was better than them because we lived up on the hill. They lived in the working class section of Mamaroneck. And who did I think that I was? Who did I think that I was with the clothes that I was wearing? Often clothes that I got from the Tishmans because they would give them as gifts at Christmas, and so they would often take some of the clothes that I'd be wearing. It was a whole saga. My parents threatened to send me to Catholic school because my grades went down. We weren't even Catholic. It's a whole story. But this is where the complexity, how complicated it was. What did it mean for my family, the only family of color to live, not just black family, the only family of color to live on that hill? To this day, there are still no other people of color. A Japanese American woman lived there for a number of years. She is now gone. So I'm going to come back to the story at the end, because there's more to that story. So this is what drives me when I think about my parents. When I think about my parents living on this piece of land, they don't live on this piece of land anymore. And then I start thinking about how my parents would never call themselves environmentalists. They would never say that's what I am. I don't even think they have a full understanding of what that actually means. What I do know is that day in and day out, for 50 years, my parents cared for this piece of land. They worked hard, they loved it, they hated it. They knew it better than the owners. And I started thinking about all the people in this country who have done that, worked the land day in, day out. They care for it, they love it. They often love it more than the owners who have a deed and have money, and I'm not putting people who have that privilege down, I'm just saying. And they're often invisible in the larger story. And so I actually this was personal. I want my parents, I want them to be in the story when we talk about the environment in this country, when we think about environmental movement. And for me, that really has to be expanded in terms of who we're talking about and who we're engaging. Because I always ask the question, who is being left out? My parents are left out. And there's a whole lot of other people in the history of this country that are left out.